Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar that's focused on cybersecurity and small businesses. We're going to talk to you about some of the cyber threats that are out there for your small business, some best practices in terms of protecting your business. And also, we're really very lucky to have a really good cyber expert that our center has worked with in the past on different trainings. He's very graciously offered to give us his time. So you're not just going to hear from me and information from SBDC, but we also have a cyber expert that's going to provide some experience and background and resources. And so before we get in, I'll give it like maybe a minute or two for everybody to stream in to the webinar. I just want to thank you for registering. We want to make it interactive too. We don't want to just read from slides or just give you information. So please put in the chat who you are, what's your business and what's your industry, so we know who we're talking to. And then please use the Q&A function if you do have any questions for us during the presentation. And then we will save time at the end for questions and answers. And we also, I know the question we get repeatedly is, can I get a copy of the presentation? Yes, you will get a copy of this presentation. Jesus will send it to you, so don't feel like you have to feverishly take notes. We will provide a copy of the presentation for you afterwards. And then for you folks that just came in, please put in the chat who you are and what's your business, because we want to know who we're talking to. Okay, we have Chetan. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started, guys, because we want to be sensitive to your time. I know some other folks are going to stream in. So as we mentioned, this presentation is called What the Hack. It's focused on cyber threats and small businesses. And you're asking, who is this guy talking to me? As I mentioned, I am Regional Director of the Florida Small Business Development Center at FIU. I'm originally from Louisiana. I have an executive certificate in cybersecurity from right here at FIU, and also have about 18 years of experience with technology issues. That experience was in Department of Commerce, the United States Senate, and I worked on a lot of issues, including telecom technology, and the topic today, cybersecurity. The photo up there, that's me on my C-SPAN moment. So I can tell my kids, you know, when they're older, like I was on C-SPAN once. Not a cool reference, but it is what it is. Before we get into the presentation, did want to mention what the Community Navigator program is, because this is a training under a Community Navigator. Community Navigator, we're basically your GPS. We are a trusted local group that's focused on helping you to access information and resources and services. So we're your advocates, your ambassadors, your connectors. Like we said up there, we're your GPS. We're not going to put up the old school compass. You know, now we got smartphones and Waze and all that. So we're there to help you to get to the place you're looking for. The Navigator program is a pilot program. It was established under the American Rescue Plan last year. It uses that Community Navigator approach to help small businesses. And so you have a lead organization, which is a hub, which is FIU, SBDC in this case. And you have spokes organizations, which are other groups in the community. And we have, for our program, we have 6 other groups that you're going to hear about in a minute to work with businesses located in Miami-Dade County. Overall, it was $100 million to 51 grantees, extremely competitive. It was broken into 3 tiers, national, state and regional, and local. And we were very lucky to be tier 2, state and regional. As I mentioned, basically the program runs from December of last year through November 30th of next year. We're under that tier 2, and we're focused on helping you with long-term economic recovery, resilience. So definitely cybersecurity falls under that. and we are reaching out in terms of targeted outreach, in terms of geographic diversity, focusing on communities that are underserved or under-resourced. And our focus is on businesses that are owned by veterans, women, socially and economically disadvantaged. But if you don't fall into those categories, we will not reject you for services. That's just the businesses that we are targeting. And in terms of the services, we're doing obviously consulting, one-on-one, training like we're talking about today, and then connecting you with really great resources in the community. So we're not territorial. If we can connect you to another group in the community, we're happy to connect you to them because we want to help you to start and grow your business. I mentioned our really great partners under Navigator. We have 6 local groups that are helping us as part of this project. Ascendus branches, the EDC of South Miami-Dade, the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, Prospera, and Startup FIU Procurement. And then SBDC at FIU is also one of the partners and providing consulting as well. But 7 total groups. We're here to help you start and grow your business. And as the previous slide mentioned, we're focused on resilience, economic recovery, and helping you grow. And then we mentioned we have a very local focus. So we're focused on businesses that are located in Miami-Dade County, socially and economically disadvantaged businesses, but we will not decline you for services if you are outside of that geographic box or those particular categories. And I'm going to ask you guys, register for Navigator today. If you haven't already registered, what do they say? If you're not a member, you can't take advantage of the benefits. If you do register for Navigator, we can get you access to those other groups, to groups in the community. And we can also get you information as for upcoming trainings, that we have. So I would encourage you to sign up. Our website is miamibusinessnavigator.com. And like I said, there you can register for consulting, register for trainings like this. And then we do share up-to-date information on resources, grants, loans for your business. We're on all the social media channels, Miami-Dade Biz Nav. And then we also are doing monthly resource fairs around the county. So you can definitely come and see us. We're usually at a community center, at a local library, at a community group. So you can come and see us in person, and you can meet with a lot of these groups in person. So now that I got that out of the way, let's get into the presentation. I always like to give this disclaimer that I don't know everything about your business. I know that I seem very knowledgeable, that I'm very wise beyond my years, but I don't know everything about your particular business, whether that's the industry, your employees, your particular situation. So I do say this is intended to give you information on how to start preparing to secure your business against a cyber attack. There may be some steps that we can't cover in Adonis or my presentation. So just want to give you that caveat that there might be other steps that you want to follow that aren't in this particular presentation. So we do encourage you, if you have particular obligations in your industry or under your particular legislation related to the service or product you provide, you do want to talk to your technology partner, your legal partners, because they might have information that might be more specific to your business. So we do like to give that disclaimer just before we start out. In terms of what we're going to talk about, we're going to focus on the cyber threat landscape. So basically, who's coming after you? Why are they targeting your small business? We're going to get into a really great presentation from Adonis in terms of how to think like a hacker. We're going to cover basic cyber hygiene. And then very important, almost more important than what we're going to talk about, we're going to give you really great cyber resources and information so that you can basically follow up on a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. Adonis, before I start off, is there anything you want to say or anything you want to cover? I know we're going to do a full introduction for you later on.
Yep, no, we're good so far.
Cool.
I'll chime in as needed. And I am checking out the Q&A, the chat. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to type it in the chat. Yeah,
give him some tough questions, guys. Stump him. Give him like really tough questions where he has to like Google something or look up something.
Ooh, Google. Oh.
So I like to start off by just giving you an example of some of the federal laws that relate to your business, depending on your industry, depending on your product or service. There are a couple of things that relate to you, whether there's the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, Electronic Privacy Act. There's things related to Department of Defense contractors, related to energy companies. For anybody that works with different patient records, protected health information, you'll know HIPAA very well, in terms of protecting that information. So I do just like to give examples, even though you're working day to day on your business. There are a lot of like federal laws related to protecting infrastructure, protecting your customer data, protecting your, in that case, in HIPAA, like health information. In terms of Florida, I assume all you guys are located in the state of Florida. Florida also does have specific legislation related to cybersecurity breaches. Does kind of get triggered if it's 500 or more individuals. It does talk to you particularly about providing notice in terms of when you determine a breach or you think that a breach reasonably might have occurred. So you are required to send a notification to everybody whose information might have been accessed as a result of the breach. So we do encourage you in those cases to consult with your attorney to review any obligation you might have under Florida law. And I did want to put that link in the presentation so that you can look at it on your own end. It's not something I'm making up. It's something that is in Florida statute. So that is something, there's not just federal legislation that relates to your business on this. There also is Florida state law that also impacts your business regarding breaches. So that's why you want to pay attention to what we're going to talk about. So in terms of cyber threat actors, we do like to cover kind of the general categories. Obviously, you have traditional criminals, folks that want to, extort your business, folks that want to access information. They want to get information to be able to monetize it. You do still have hacktivists out there that are trying to send a message. You have kind of just traditional espionage, maybe China or Russia. They do want to get some intellectual property. They want to get access, cripple particular things. And then obviously war, we all see what's happening in Ukraine and with Russia. So, you can, in those cases, hack particular infrastructure, electrical, banking, those type of things, and kind of cause some disruptions. So you do generally, the actors kind of fall in those 4 categories. In terms of the type of threats, they do have kind of a random grouping of them. They can range everything from Internet of Things hacking, basically LoJack stealing your laptop, stealing your phone, computer viruses, spam, spyware, ransomware, phishing and spear phishing, denial of service. Some of the ones that we do kind of highlight for you is phishing. In terms of phishing, that's an email, a text, a pop-up that's designed to trick you into giving them information. More advanced attacks, kind of like spear phishing, is when they get information from social media. An example I can talk to you about is we actually were given this presentation with a larger company, and when we were talking about phishing, one of the participants said that actually one of their colleagues wasn't able to be at the presentation because their company had a spear phishing attack where the CEO was not traveling, but basically somebody had reached out to the receptionist and said, hey, I'm leaving for Orlando. I need you to wire money to this account. And she did. She didn't check with the boss. She just wired the money. And that actually was somebody that got information that was able to basically trick her into doing it. So that person that was supposed to be at the cybersecurity training was dealing with the aftermath of a spear phishing attack. So that just kind of shows you it does happen to small businesses just like you. In terms of ransomware that everybody's kind of seen, that's when they do attack and they make critical information or systems inaccessible via encryption. The victims must pay a ransom to receive the decryption key. Sometimes they give you a key, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they give you the key, but then they still keep different programs on your computer. So it is kind of a difficult situation. Adonis, did you want to talk about anything on ransomware? Because I know that's something that everybody's kind of paranoid about.
Sure, yeah. So on the ransomware side, and hey everyone. So my as Brian had mentioned previously, my background is in cybersecurity, and I'll have a bio slide with all that background information. But yeah, on the ransomware side, the goal, if the folks on here remember when viruses kind of took off with the Melissa virus and whatnot, viruses are just malicious just out the bat, right? Ransomware, on the other hand, like viruses, have a different end game in mind, which is to hold your data hostage until you pay up, right? So that's the goal for ransomware, and it's usually followed by phishing attack, right? So phishing comes first. Phishing is to try to get you to click that link, or that malicious payload that you download will normally tie into the download of a ransomware, and then once that's infected on your computer, it will just go ahead, either encrypt your computer, and if you have a network of computers, it'll go ahead and send it and spread it to the rest of them.
And I know if folks don't have like data monitoring, if they're not monitoring who's in their system, some of these folks can be in for like months, kind of playing
Correct.
around with the system and checking around. And
yeah, so not necessarily. So after a phishing attack, you could potentially just go into phase one for a ransomware, which is just, they're just sitting in your network, just monitoring what's going on. Normally they'll sit in your email communications, just kind of seeing, what's going in and out. So the phishing exercise, I'll start with, it's called oh my God, credential harvesting. And so with credential harvesting, now I have your username and password for your email. I'm just going to sit there and just monitor, because like you had mentioned, this individual, the lady, the secretary, knew that the boss was gone. That means that they were actively monitoring their email, and they knew that this was going to happen. And that's when they struck, right? Maybe ransomware wasn't the way that they were able to get in, right? So just by phishing and getting credentials, that's just enough, right? They won't have to exfile any. They potentially exfile all your emails and hold that as hostage and say, hey, we'll leak this to the web. And the rule of thumb is not to pay the ransomware. Immediately call your local law enforcement. They'll refer you either to the FBI or the Secret Service, run through that program. And more times than not, there's multiple reasons to report it to the FBI, which is one, it's going to serve for their case when they have to arrest someone or claims or put take additional action. And in addition to that, normally the FBI or Secret Service will have decryptors for ransomwares that you can't find online, right? So there are decryption websites that you can go to based that you don't need to pay if it's a low, I guess, skilled cyber attack. Those decryptors are available online, right? Then the next step up would be the FBI would probably have it, and then the third is more targeted, right? So if you're on a targeted level, that's a whole different ballgame, right? That's a serious offense. You're probably on someone's radar.
Cool, thanks. See, that's the kind of information. So that's why we're very appreciative that Donis took the time to be here to give some more context. And he's going to have a lot more information too in terms of his part of the presentation. So we did talk about phishing emails. So we don't want to talk about conceptually. We did want to give you an example. So this is just an example. But I'm sure most of the folks watching, you can actually go to your email and probably pull up a phishing email. I know everybody has phishing emails that they're getting. Actually, I got one yesterday from FIU. But this shows you basically where they send you the email, and then if you kind of hover over the link, it's not actually going to where it's supposed to go. They kind of spoofed the link on it. And so that kind of shows you what type of thing, and then they just need you to click on it. Basically, they need you to send the email, open the email, and then click on the link, and then they can kind of initiate some of it. And sometimes they do have some of those web forms, right, Adonis, where they'll have you put in your password or put in information.
That is correct. So that's credential harvesting. They'll take you onto a website that kind of looks like the website you're used to. I myself was hired multiple times in my past career to make websites like this. So this is Amazon. So if you notice, Amazon here is misspelled. And I mean, it's very simple to copy any of these websites. They're getting a lot more creative. So this is just a simple example, but it's always very wise to stay alert and just ask questions, right? If something looks kind of, we're always rushing. And so just slow down, take a step back to kind of analyze what you're getting, right? Like, hey, did I order that 6-pack of glue from Amazon? Probably not. If the answer is no, it's probably a fish, right? And in addition to phishing, you have vishing, which is through the voice, right? So they call you, and I'm sure everybody, I mean, by show of hands, there's 28 folks on here. I'm sure you've all gotten that voice call. Hey, your what is it? I got it the other day. I think it's your Disney Plus account has expired or something. I mean, they're getting very, very creative, right? They're a hacker just needs to get lucky once.
Mhm. Yeah, they play the numbers. So, but I think you need to pay attention. I know one of the companies that they can offer you kind of um, free phishing tests, and they can kind of do some things. There are some more things that are more premium in terms of it, and those are ones where they do like Pizza Hut coupons, like free Pizza Hut coupons, and everybody clicks on it, the Pizza Hut coupon, like give me the Pizza Hut discount. So any type of thing like that. Like those are things, and they just need somebody in your office to click on it to get access and get things going. In terms of kind of what's the cost to your business. So there's a lot of things that you kind of can't quantify. Your loss of your reputation, your trust, your brand image. Think about some of the companies that had some of these massive hacks. The example I always give is my dad hates Target. He does not like shopping at Target, doesn't want to go in. We actually were there one day, and I didn't have my credit card with me, so I asked him if he could use his card. He used his card to pay for it. Basically, they had a breach. His credit card information was given out. He had to get a new credit card. He was royally mad. He would not shop at Target before that. He will not ever shop at Target again after that. Um, but then there's also things that you can lose in terms of losing your customers. You could have some fines, legal fees, obviously any investigation costs, um, insurance hikes, and then loss of any contracts that you have. And then this is from the IBM Ponemon Institute. Basically, that the average cost of a data breach to a small business is approximately 4.2 million. That's basically about $180 per customer. That quantifies some of this type of stuff, like the loss of customers, legal fees, things like that. So you do want to pay attention. You do want to pay attention in terms of this, because there's a lot of things that you don't necessarily think about that could impact your business. And in terms of the breach, also now, obviously, everybody's working remote. There's a lot of folks working remote. Cyber risks have increased. Basically, on average, folks that have that remote work model, they paid about $1 million for data breach damages. The biggest contributor to those costs is basically containing it, basically finding it and containing it. So they talk about how with remote work, breaches took more than 287 days from the breach to containment. That's about 212 days to identify and 75 days to contain. Adonis, did you want to talk about anything on that in terms of like identifying and containing viruses?
With the remote worker environment, so we're all moving to like a cloud presence. It's how do we secure those end computers, right? So you buy a computer from the store. How do you make sure that your remote working force has the correct antivirus, that computer's up to date? How do you monitor that, right? That's step one, right? The easiest target for us. So as a hacker, right? So I'll put my hacking hat. The easiest way for me into a system is not through these firewalls, right? So behind me back here, if you guys see these, they're firewalls that you usually have in front of your organization. And for the most part, the firewall's job is to protect things as they go outbound, right? Most organizations don't host anything in premise anymore. Everything's in the cloud. So firewall's job has kind of shifted more into protecting things, the unknown that's inside, trying to go out. So if as people are kind of working hybrid, when that device goes back on the network, it's much more secure because now it's on premise, at least on the outbound. From a risk perspective internally, because that device is in and out of the organization, it's very possible that at home, their teenager downloads some type of bootleg movie and now has infected that computer, as an example, or downloaded a game. So that's one of the, among many threats that are going on with the remote working forces. You have these computers in an unsecure, unmonitored environment. And so they can either potentially capture credentials from that particular user that's at home, right? So let's say Adonis is working from home. They can get my credentials if they're of any importance, right? And then from there, pivot, what's called pivot to another user, send an internal phishing campaign, right? A phishing email internally from a trusted email, or even use those accounts for external malicious attacks. Like I've seen a few of those, right, where I've gotten emails from, let's say, a company. They're not doing it internally. They use that because that is a safe email, and they'll use that to send out, right? And the complications go on and on. But for the most part, is do some checks on the computers is what I'm getting at, right? From a sort of reduce that risk, lock down the computer. If it is a BYOD, consider purchasing the computer and then having your tools installed on it so that that computer is locked down when it goes to the user. If you cannot avoid that part, consider VPN connections. Consider implementing MFA for sure. Right off, you should have MFA on everything. And for those that are not aware of MFA, is that lovely text message you get on your phone that says, "Hey, this is your PIN," or any tools that have some type of so in my case, I get, like, for work, I have the numbers that come up, or it gets a push notification that says allow. So implementing that would be your first safeguard for remote workers.
Yeah. So, and then I know later on we do get into some of those things about how if your company's purchasing the equipment, you can set the rules on it. Like you can't download Pokemon Go or random third-party apps. Those kind of things you can restrict, and you can kind of mention what's on there. They can't put different things. So those are things that the company can establish in terms of your policies. In terms of remote work, we covered that. I was also just going to note about, because of the pandemic, you have more transactions than ever before online or via apps. So as a business, a secure shop is like the norm for customers. So they will look for that if your website is secure, and if they're able to do transactions securely. And also, we always say customers basically, talk with their funds. They talk with where they do business. So they're looking at that security as a key indicator on where to do business. And that's a major security consideration. So you don't want to let your customers doubt their faith and their trust in you as a company and your brand if you have a security breach, or if you're lax with your cybersecurity preparations. So did want to just note that in the pandemic. And then as the graphic shows you, basically a lot of small businesses are like, I'm really small, nobody cares about me, nobody's going to hack my business, I don't have anything people want to steal. So I do want to review with you real quick just why small businesses are cyber targets. And we're here in South Florida, so it is like a good fishing analogy, where you use small fish to catch bigger fish. And so that's kind of a key premise of cybersecurity, is kind of getting in the supply chain and kind of working the way up the chain. So on that point, basically some of the reasons why, obviously you're in the supply chain. So you might be a really small fish, to keep the analogy going, but you're an entry point to those larger companies. Either you're a smaller vendor, you're a contractor, you're a partner. You might have access to some of these networks, some of these supplier portals, where you might have lower cybersecurity protections and staffing and budgets than some of the larger ones, or even like a federal government agency. So you're a good way to get in. For small businesses, as I mentioned, you have the lack the budget, you lack the time, you lack the expertise. So they traditionally don't have advanced security measures involved. For a small business owner, you're the CEO, the CFO, the CTO. Some days you're the janitor. You're the office assistant. You wear a lot of hats. And so cybersecurity and IT might not necessarily be your area of expertise. In terms of small businesses, you might not think that you have data or information that somebody wants to get access to, but you have, like Adonis was talking about some of these examples, you have employee data, customer data, credit card information, health data. If you deal with anything with health, HIPAA is a 4-letter word. God bless you if you work with health data, and then also intellectual property. So there are things that somebody could steal. They could basically ransomware. They could leverage. They could sell it. So there is information that they can use. And Adonis, I know you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just saying to Rowan, if anybody saw the chat, and this is why I encourage, look, guys, I mean, you decided to negotiate time with us today. So
Mhm,
please use us, ask the questions. I get them asked all the time at the wrong moment. Don't let that wrong moment come, right? You want to be prepared, at least mentally start thinking about it. And to Rohan's point, right? This is a perfect example, right? It's a small barber shop. What the hell does a barber shop have, right? What possible data? And the trick is that they know that there is a financial uh, gain from this, right? So you may not think right now, right? So to Brian's point, right? You do
mhm,
have valuable data that's valuable to you. It may not be valuable to them, but it's valuable to you, right? Your client history, if you've been in business long enough, that CRM tool that you have of your current
mhm,
business, that's valuable to you, and hackers know this. Why target small business? Well, they're just easy. I mean, I can go right now, and I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just that we're not malicious mindset, and hackers are.
mhm.
Uh, you know, um, I know there's a pervert. A proverb in the Bible that talks about knowing your enemy. Know your enemy, so you can spot them, right? But that's essentially it. You guys, you don't put an alarm on your car for your sake, right? You put it because you value that car and you made an investment to do it. The same thing happens with house insurance. You bought this house, you don't have thousands of dollars sitting on the side, so you put insurance on the house. Think about IT and the steps necessary to protect your environment as insurance. It's not 100%, right? You're heaven forbid we get a hurricane that's really, really bad. It's going to do some damage, and we hope that the insurance covers most of it. But that's the same concept that goes with IT and any of the decisions you get, any small business makes with their organization.
Yeah,
Um,
and for a lot of small business owners, $7,000 is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money for Sony or Walmart or anything like that, but $7,000 is a lot for
yeah.
small businesses we work with.
And
So,
in Roland's example, I'm wondering if she had contacted the FBI to run through that process, right? Which a lot of folks are not aware that there is such organizations that could have helped her out, right? And I don't know if she did or not, if this individual
mhm.
did or not, but that's
Yeah,
something. That's why you're here now, to get the information. So I encourage you, ask, make comments, like Rowan's comment, if you had someone, so others can see that they're, don't be another statistic, guys. This is ladies and gents, don't be another statistic. I see
yeah,
them all the time. I've seen them go unreported, which is a shame. Brian, that's the other problem, right? There's a lot of data. There's only data that you see, but there's a lot of people that do not report. So
mhm. Yeah, and that's kind of key that we're gonna have at the end is in terms of information on FBI, Secret Service, those type of information. So that's a good point. And then in terms of the final five, the final ones of the five, in terms of return on investment, ransomware campaigns, they could cost as low as like $34 a month, and they could return $25,000 if they catch somebody. Obviously, the more expensive and sophisticated attacks, they could cost more money, but they could get you like $1 million a month in terms of kind of return on investment. And then like we've talked about previously in some of these presentations is they're playing the numbers. Basically, they could be automated. They could target thousands or millions of businesses at a time, and basically just need a couple people to catch that they could get some money out of them. So like that one, maybe they weren't trying to target that barbershop for $7,000, but they saw, hey, I got somebody. Let me go ahead and get some money out of it. So definitely playing the numbers. And then as Adonis, they were talking about basically the small business tools are no match for the threats, malware, and the attacks that are happening today. So most of them were not designed to block ransomware and other malware. They weren't designed to fend off web-based attacks, and they weren't designed to stop multi-vector attacks and threats. So you might be using kind of like a knife to a gunfight, the example. And I know Adonis, you kind of wanted
I
to.
threw sorry for throwing this curveball at you, Brian. So this was one of the slides from my deck that I thought
Mhm,
was important, right? So a lot of small businesses go in and thinking, hey, I'm gonna get this Linksys router at the perimeter, and that's it, I'm done, right? This basic, and that's it. That is not as effective for malware, right? Like technology, I mean, think about it, guys. This is this is a computer, this cell phone thing in my hand.
Mhm.
And Brian, you used to have a beeper, right?
I never had a beeper. No, I never had a beeper. I had
But you
friends that
get,
did.
yeah, well, you get where I'm
I had a
getting at,
BlackBerry
right?
though. I had a BlackBerry at one point. I don't know if
I
that was
remember
cool.
having a small flip phone, and that was it. But if you think about it nowadays, this is much more this is just as these mobile devices are just as powerful as computers. So just thinking about how advanced these threats are and on what you're putting, what type of protection you're putting in front of it, right? What type of protection you're putting at the endpoint, what type of protection are you enabling that is free, MFA as an example, right?
Mhm.
Passwords are not effective at deterring the first level of attack, which is I'm going to phish you, I'm going to social engineer you, because people are the weakest link, not computers, right? Computers become the weakest link when we allow them to be. This is, I know we all get annoyed by updating our apps, updating our Windows, our Macs, whatever platform you are. There's a reason for that, because once I can get past the human factor, which is the easiest, because you can't patch a human, right? Only cybersecurity training, and it's all behavior, right? Adjusting behavior.
Mhm.
Then you have the second part is, now that I broke the behavior, I was able to get past the behavior, is the computer vulnerable to an attack? If it's not, that's where I stop. I can't go any further.
Yeah. So that's a good point. And don't worry about throwing me a curveball. That's we're here to get good information. So that's cool. So I was going to turn it over to Adonis in terms of how to think like a hacker. And then also I know that he had some really good resources for you. So I'll kind of be your slide guy. So just tell me next slide when you're ready for
So
me.
so if it works for you, Brian, I have it up already and I started on this slide. Is it okay if I share it?
Yeah. So I'll just stop sharing.
All right, so again, I
Yeah.
encourage everyone to ask. Again, one of my main roles, I was a virtual CISO before coming to where I'm at now, Fortinet. It was just much more lucrative on this side of the house. So that's where I'm at here. Let me see here. I do see Brian and the rest of the team, if you guys can help me with some of the questions here that are open, and I'll just go through a slide and then I'll ask the ones that are for me. But a little bit about me. So yes, I've been doing this for a while. I actually started by breaking about computers. Never thought that I was going to do cybersecurity, because back when I was growing up, it was, the most hacking I did was, get into my teacher's computers and steal test, right? But these were flat networks. So this goes back to the main comment I was talking about. We're not having the skill sets, right? Not having the understanding. It's very basic. Everything's online, so everything can be learned online, and that's where I kind of started my career in cyber and just IT. I do have a master's of business. I am chairman of the MDC cyber advisory board. So if anyone, supporting back to community, and I hold the CISSP, which is a cybersecurity. Those are 4 cybersecurity certs at the bottom, not the one on the left. So the one on the left is a green belt in Lean Six Sigma. And you're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, Adonis Ardenias.
And
So,
somebody just noted you had a different haircut in the photo. They noted you had a different haircut.
so this was this was me collecting money at my master's program. I think it was some event that I was collecting money for, and somebody just happened to take it. I thought it was funny, but it's when I grow it up a little bit short now. But thinking like a hacker, part 1, right? So get to know your data. Where is it? Where does it live? How does it flow? And how is that important to you, right? I'm not going to talk too much to it. Is it encrypted? So most cloud services, just so you're aware, your QuickBooks Online is encrypted. When you're leveraging some type of on-prem QuickBook or on-prem services, just keep in mind that someone needs to update that. There's a reason why you pay a little bit extra for Office 365 or Google Cloud, any type of services like that where there's a monthly reoccurring, is that you're basically offloading that risk to them. The only risk you have to be that you're responsible for, and this falls on the shared responsibility model, is your users, right? So at this point, you created the username and password. That responsibility falls on you. But Google, Microsoft, as an example for email, they're responsible for the infrastructure, updating that platform, the SLAs, the MSA, and the security surrounding the physical part of that product or service that they're offering you. Versus, let's say you house it internally. I have I've worked with individuals who have a QuickBooks server on-prem. And so I tell them all the time, you should keep your, they want to offer Wi-Fi password as I guess wireless as an example. And I say, you should keep those separated, because someone like me sitting there in your lobby could just sit in and try to break into your network, right? And steal that QuickBooks file or anything on that server that to you, it should be valuable, right? But think about if they have it, all the access to all the clients, and then the malicious gears start turning. What can I do with that data, right? So knowing your data, understanding what's encrypted, unencrypted, and the sensitivity of that data, right? To Brian's point, as he mentioned about HIPAA, there are some types of you have requirements that you have to meet as far as protecting that data. If you're ever in doubt, feel free to reach to the SBA group. There are communities out there. In addition to that, I would also mention that always consider documenting less data, right? So just because you're not being obligated by some type of regulatory compliance now, ask yourself, do I need this data from my customers? Right? Do I need their social security number? The answer to that is no, you shouldn't need their social security number unless you're the SBA. I think the SBA does collect tax information. Emails, how can I protect emails? Because that's very critical as well nowadays, because everybody uses their account on that. I see a question here about how do you stop telephone attacks? So unfortunately, that is an inside. Some of these are actually inside jobs. So the ones that you guys are listening to about SIM swapping, and I think that's Miss Jones, I believe, right? Yeah, I think you're talking about swim swapping. And if that's the case, this is an internal targeted attack. Why? Let's think about this. How do you access Bitcoin, right? Or cryptocurrency? It's through your, you have your, most folks use their MFA. So this is an MFA targeted attack for the most part, right? It's how, we knew how to do social engineering, hackers, and I'm talking about hackers. So I'm going to talk like one. I'm going to give you the insight like about a full-blown hacker. I know how to social engineer you. I can get whatever I want from you from a personal perspective, which will lead to credentials. So that's your username and password combination. Then you have step 3, if you have it enabled, right? So I'm going to try to log in. I got your credentials. Oh man, I'm being prompted for MFA. I flag you on my list. Now I got to figure out, okay, who is your service provider? There are free services online that can detect this. And now can I inside job someone? I pay them. And this goes back to why we have a fraud problem. Think about the young lady or the entry level job that gets at a hospital or at a medical clinic, and just Brian or myself go up to that lady, we swap her $100 and we tell her, hey, $100 is more than what she makes, right? This is why we're in the whole what is it, salary, minimum wage crisis, right? Because there's people out there, $100 for social security numbers. She doesn't know what that's really worth in the black market, right? I think we were going, records in the dark web, I think, are somewhere between $200 to $300 a pop, right? Depends on how clean and how good the data is. But that's how much it's worth. So for him, $50, hey, I'll give you $100, give me many social security numbers that you have. And the same problem lies with the SIM swapping, as you were describing there, Ms. Jones. So not to dwell too much on that. So tip 1, know your data. Where is it? Is it encrypted? What services do I have, right? Doing an audit of what it is that you have. Tip 2, how are you monitoring access to that data? Who has access? Do they have the right access? Is there a log that records every time that somebody touches it? Obviously, regulations are going to give you no other choice but to implement some type of system like that. That's not always the case for everyone else, right? QuickBooks has logs. Time and time again, I've seen people share the admin account. Not good, because now you don't have a way to track who is the one that made a change. This is why every single user, every single time, should have a different username, password, combination, MFA, where and if available, right? So that's number 2, right? Know where your data is, who has access to your data. I'm not going to dwell too much on the rest of the, again, you guys are going to get the slide deck, so you don't have to write this down. If you have any particular questions, please let me know. And tip number 3, understand your data. Why is it valuable? Why would someone want to steal it? Again, back to what I was saying is The value of the data is the type of data. Social security numbers are highly valuable. Credit card numbers, the whole bin with the expiration, zip code, those are valuable as well. They usually buy them, they get them in bulk, right? For these, again, I hate to target the mom and pop, mom and pop shops are very, very key on this. So not necessarily that they hack you directly, but they may use you as an avenue to commit cybercrime. If you got a credit card processing machine, I think we're all fully aware of the credit card skimmers that go on the credit on the machine. So always checking, having policies or procedures to check them. Even yourself, touch them, pull them off. There are procedures for that. I think, Brian, if anything, I will try to find out. I think the FBI actually runs like a program to help small businesses or businesses identify how to pull that. And there's YouTube videos on it,
Yeah. And
right?
I just think about like the gas station one is probably the most common one, but they do have them at other businesses as well. So those are like, vending machines and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's something that, we can provide some information afterwards.
Yeah, the swipe is the easiest. Right now, to my knowledge, the chip is a token. It's tokenized, so it's not as easy to do yet that I'm aware of. The swipe was because when you swipe, it's like scanning a QR code. When you swipe a credit card, right, this little magnetic strip has the information that you can visually see, right? That's why but when they swipe it, the credit card system tags it as a swipe versus as a manual entry, right? That's the difference, right? There's a protocol that says, here's information, how was it obtained, swipe, okay, that should be more secure, right? Then manual entry is a little bit, it take a little bit more cautious with it. And then you have token, and then you have NRF, NRF, I think, near field radio, NFR, I think, where you tag the things. You have to be careful. So in my wallet, it's foiled with like a metallic, like an aluminum foil. So you can buy a wallet, or they sell like these little card holders. So if you have any credit cards that have let me see if one of these have it. They have a little symbol on it. Okay, this one does. I'm trying to just hide they have a little symbol that looks like a little wave. That means that this credit card has a near field radio. That means if I apply it next to a swipe, it could be read. So going back to this, right? Understanding the data, why is it valuable? Your consumers' data, right? Not just so much yours, but your consumers. And then also as far as yours, what type of intellectual property? Do you have a secret sauce, right? So if you're a restaurant starting up and your taco's amazing because everybody loves the sauce and you keep that close to heart, just like the KFC recipe or the Coca-Cola recipe, that's what attackers are after, right? And they just need to get lucky once. So let's move into identifying critical information. So any questions? So here, let me take a moment. Feel free to unmute yourself. If that's what Brian, does this allow people to unmute?
We could towards the end. I'd say if we want
Okay.
folks to talk, we can do it at the end. And I think some of the questions, we could probably cover those at the end too. They're kind of more general questions.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, so I'll do that. So please, line up your questions and I'll Q&A them at the end, right? So put it in the Q&A. I see that some folks were chatting, but there is a Q&A part, and that makes sure that we answer all those. So critical information, we went over this, right? For financial transactional information, website. So yeah, protecting your register is important, because if I can get access to that, it's a process to get for my end game, right? Business partner information, as Brian was saying, right? It's not necessarily your data, it's who you have access to, right? If you're doing DoD contracts, I may go, when I am targeting my customers, I will find out what is the best way or the easiest way to get into their network. And normally they're not necessarily targeting you because of the reasons you think they are, right? They're probably targeting because you are associated, or they know that you're associating and doing business with whoever their main target is. For example, let's say the pipeline hack. They would have potentially tried to identify who's doing business with them, right? Because the pipeline has the money, right? We'll put a fictitious company, 500, a Fortune 500 company does business, subcontract some type of trucking company, and they have some gateway into their system. I'm going to go after the trucking company because I know for a fact that trucking company is not going to have the same security controls that this Fortune 500 company has. Right, so that's partner portals and whatnot. Continue with critical information, employee W-2s. Again, that's why I was saying about the Social Security numbers are very, very still worth money on the dark web. Tax ID numbers and unique information software. So what they're saying here about unique information and software, so things that are specific to you, give me a big leg up on getting in, and I will give you guys an example actually. So I'm just gonna show something here real quick. And let me see if I can explore data. All right, so let's take a peek at a website I use a lot. It's called Shodan. And I'm just gonna look at the US. And I'm not logged in as myself, so let's just say, so this is a public scanner that hackers are gonna use. So this is not an active scan by any means, right? This is me just identifying, hey, who has a particular system on this port that's open in the US. I didn't go as far as knowing researching vulnerabilities, but this would be something that I want to attack, right? I'm doing research, and this is how I would go about it as an attacker on a very basic, non-intrusive way. And these are tools that are available. If I ever wanted to see something on a company, I could do like DNS dumpster, and I can do, let's just say, I don't know, AOL.com. Everybody knows AOL. So what can I do with this information? So this is public accessible information. This is what I talk about, like digital real estate. This is your digital real estate, and where it ties into that last one that you saw, unique information software. And what I'm looking for is I can see that they have, let's say, they're using Amazon, which is not a big thing, but I know now I have an understanding of what type of platforms they're using. Why is this important? So let's say this one would be like a third-party application here, right? So whatever they're using here, it's home built, and this would be something I could potentially research more and attack, right? So here's telling me about the system that they're using. That leads back into, who are your vendors? Make sure that they're updating their information. So I just Googled it. These are some vulnerabilities, and there's nothing great enough on here that I could leverage, right? There's kind of old 2018, nothing much, but if I can check that AOL, this is an old version, I can go here and check, hey, is there a patch for this? Is this version vulnerable? And this is how it would start, right? So this is a little bit more targeted. Obviously, I got to do a little bit more work, but this is just an example of how far they would go in order to get in if they really wanted to, right? So if you are on their target list, and also on opportunistic attacks. So opportunistic attacks is an example of, I know for a fact that whoever has this software, so let's say I was searching for this software specifically, and just using it as an example and trying to see where the name was. Right here, passenger by this company, right? I could just search and show it in, hey, show me everyone that has it. And it'll probably pop up with a list. So let's say like a product.
I was going to point out, like, you know what you're doing, but how quick did you pull up those websites and be able to do a search? So you imagine if you're doing a targeted campaign, you can really do the research pretty quick to find out all the information you need.
Yeah, and this is accessible to everyone, by the way. This is, if you got a 15-year-old at home that knows enough about computers, they can just do some YouTube videos and research how to do this, right? So I literally just showed, and hey, tell me who has Microsoft Exchange, because I heard that Exchange has a vulnerability, and I want to know if they're in the US. And then I could go as far as, I want to know the version, because the version is what determines what type of attack I'm going to use on a box now, not even a human, on a box that's presented out to the web, right? So this is a box, and most home users don't have anything presented out. You may have a DVR. So everyone here, I'm going to freak you out, but if your DVR is open to the world and you're using admin 1234556, guess what? That's going to be on here too, right? I think it's screenshot. Yes, I think is a command, or one, or true, one of these. I'll find it out. I don't know all the queries, but there's one that actually shows me like video screenshots, right? Like people who put their DVRs on the web, and that's publicly available, right? So not to scare you too much, just wanted to give you guys a reality that it's not difficult to do. And so, you have to up the game a little bit. Real quick on passwords. This shouldn't be rocket science as per NIST. So one of the things I didn't change on the original slide, Brian, was there's something here about changing passwords, but let's go over the don'ts real quick. Don't use personal information in your password. Think about a phrase. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be a phrase. Put at least a symbol, put at least one number, put at least one capital letter, and just think about a phrase. My cat Billy is great. Change maybe one or two of the letters into a symbol, right? Exclamation mark for your eyes, maybe an @ sign for the A's as an idea. Don't use the same password for multiple accounts. Take that same phrase principle. So let's say your banking account, whatever you decide, you can say, hey, for my banking account, I'm going to use Billy's got money. All right. And that's going to be for everything that's banking. And I'm going to put, some type of symbol or something that uniquely identifies my TD bank account as an example. Right. And then for your shopping, you're going to put Billy likes to shop. And now you can use that. So if you're doing a little bit of credential recycling, which is frowned upon, right? But if you're looking at a way to kind of keep a phrase, but use in combination with something's going to be easy to remember for your different websites, that's one way to go about it, right? Phrase, where it is that you're going, like you could use it like Amazon, and I know it's for Amazon, but if you use a term that you kind of recognize, right, like shopping or cart, it can help you identify like, oh, this is my password for Amazon, but it doesn't say Amazon in it. It's just my phrase plus a word in the middle, at the beginning, at the end.
Yeah, and you have a lot of tools at your disposal. You have
Yep.
basically uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols. So you have a lot of different tools you can use.
Don't use, yes and no. There are password managers. I wouldn't post it. Don't put in a post-it. There are password managers that you can consider. Make sure that your password manager has a dual identification, right? So some type of biometric. I know that iCloud is pretty good at it, where they force you to do either the facial recognition or your finger. I know Samsung has a product as well. So take those into consideration. The ones built into Chrome and the ones built into the Explorers, they're not bad. They're frowned upon as well because there isn't really a way to secure access to it. I think the computer password, and everybody knows your computer password at home. To Brian's point, the to-dos is uppercase. Everybody knows this. I would say that the minimum is more than 8 characters. I would move it up to 14 and more, right? So this is where the phrase comes into play. I know everybody's gonna hate me, but listen, we have no other way around this. At the point, right? You want to make it just difficult for them to, when they do download a hash list, which is, so let's say the T-Mobile attack as an example. If I remember correctly, they downloaded just the hash or salted passwords, and what this is it's your password but encrypted. What they'll do is they'll run it through a system that just processes words, and it goes, hey, what I'm gonna generate this word. I'm gonna generate a hash. Does a hash match the list? If yes, then I decoded a password. It takes time, but 8-character passwords are faster than 14-character passwords, right? Regardless of what the characters are. The change password regularly is not, has kind of changed over the years. So there's some organizations that do it every 90 days. For your house, I would say as long as you're using MFA, you can extend that a lot more. If you're not using MFA, then yes, you have to change it. If you have a service account, if it's a password used for some type of server, and your IT folks would know this, you can generate those, right? There are password generators that will generate a strong password for you. And I know we're over time here. I'm at 35 out of 40,
Yeah, I
Brian.
think you're okay. You're good.
Okay. Mobile devices, not all devices are correct except for iPhones for the most part. Make sure that they're up to date. You can install, they're not usually prone to malware. Android, yes, I think the marketplace is all based on the marketplace. Just audit your software, right? This goes for your computers and your mobile devices. Audit what software you have installed and remove them. Right, the ones that you don't use or you don't use often. As far as requires strong authentication passwords, just as long as you have a PIN and you have your finger, just PIN your phone, right? If it's a work phone or device, I would suggest encrypting the device so that way if it does get stolen, no one can access it and so on, right? This goes the same when you're connecting to wireless. As long as that connection is encrypted, you ensure that it's locked down. Oh, sorry, let me go back. Third-party softwares, just be careful with them. Trust but verify always is the case, is a term in the cyber world. Don't wait until a device, registered devices, plan for a lost or stolen device. Have a backup. So for those iPhone users out there, have a backup, someone that you trust that can kind of be like find my device kind of thing. I have my family members, so like my brother and stuff like that, or friend that in the event that something gets lost, they can track where the device was just to see it. Don't open up your Bluetooth. Try to limit your hotspot. Apple does a pretty good job. I think the newer phones are pretty good at it. The older phones, you can leave it on. Don't jeopardize that. I won't necessarily say don't use public Wi-Fi. Just be careful with it because unfortunately if you can tether to your phone, do that. That would be my priority. If you have to use a public Wi-Fi, why is this important? Why you have to be careful? So with public Wi-Fi, just so you guys understand how this works, there's an attack type called man in the middle, where what happens is I'm going to get a computer device and act as the same Wi-Fi. You would be connected to me, and then you run your data through me before you go out. Now, there are ways to identify this. Unfortunately, we know how, not everyone is in this field, so they wouldn't be able to very easily identify what's called a rogue access point. The same thing happens with, would you be able to identify a rogue person or a spy out in the street, right? Trying to think of an example of a spy in real life, Brian. Like somebody pretending to be someone that they're not, basically. And there's a way to do that in the cyber world. This is why they say public Wi-Fi, you should be wary. If you're going to use a public Wi-Fi, ensure that you have some type of VPN. Brian, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I mean, and I think you do sometimes when you guys do pen tests and things, and that when you go in and you kind of act like you're like the copy maintenance person
Yep,
and things like that, where you can actually get in and get physical access to computers and equipment.
that is correct. That's a social engineering exercise, yes. Yep. So I actually used to have uniforms that I would get from Goodwill, and that's how I would get in, right? If I needed to go into a doctor or a medical facility, I usually try with a very nice suit. And I had someone on the team that was Indian, and because again, no stereotyping, but unfortunately we stereotype. I had there was a gentleman that was from Indian origin, and he was the one that would get sent in to do social engineering at hospitals because most doctors are normally Indian, right? Again, the hacker's going to scope out the organization and identify the cultures, a lot of things that go into it, because again, we're manipulating the human. And we're going to identify, hey, what's the easiest way to get in there? At the banks, I used to have a female on the team, and that's who unfortunately, it is what it is. We used to send her in because she had the highest success rate at pen testing or social engineering when we had to do physical social engineering through the building, right? And then for me, my background was in Active Directory and network administration. So I would be used when I had to get into a very secure network. So they would bring me in. I would just dress up as either a UPS guy, FedEx guy, or I had a suit. And I would go, if it was a bank, I would normally go in a suit, right? Again, scope out the area, understand your client, your end game, what you need to do. And then we would just, we'll just figure out what we needed to get in. So yeah, text messages. I keep getting these texts that say that Oprah's dead. I'm like, what? And you can tell right away that the link is super fake. Delete or report. So in Google, there is a way to report phishing. Please report it, because what happens is if you don't report it, it goes unreported. No one ever knows. So there is a report button for that. Same thing goes for emails and texts. I'm not going to go through much on the numbers. So this is talking about cybersecurity budget, right? So how much are you willing to spend to protect your business? You could do an audit. So Brian, I don't know if SBS has a audit or consulting service for small businesses yet. For auditing just identifying gaps in cybersecurity where a company should be recommended to spend their money.
I think we had some of the resources at the end where you're able to do some of that free testing. access some of the free resources. Those are things that we can do. We can give them general kind of tabletop exercises and things to pay attention to. The main point of this slide usually is, these are like billions of dollars that they spend. If you're going to spend money on your business, where can you be more targeted in terms of using it? And that's where we always, just like you mentioned earlier, we focus on the employees and training employees, not just like fancy equipment and things like that, because you can have really fancy equipment and deterrents and things like that, but it only takes one person clicking on one email or one link to like shoot a hole in that. So we always talk about, if you're going to spend your money, if you're going to focus on your stuff, the focus should be on training your employees, because those are like the weakest link in any company.
Yep. So I echo that as well, right? So training your employees. Employees are the weakest link at the end of the day, because you cannot install an antivirus on an employee. You can't patch an employee. These are behaviors. So training them, there's a bunch of free resources out there. The company I work for, as an example, does offer up to 25 licenses free, as Brian, and there's some other ones. So I did make a long list of those that you can go. I would encourage you to check out. There's a lot of things that you can do for free at zero cost for your organization to get you started. Obviously, as everything else, right? Someone has to put it together. That's where the money goes to. So if you find a platform that works for you, and it fills all the gaps, I highly encourage considering making that small investment, because that investment up front is what's going to protect you in the long run, right? It's the same reason why we get insurance and we do other things for organizations. So I encourage to train them and retrain them and test them, right? So don't just train them, test them, that they learn what it is, right? Go in dressed up as a scrub, get your cousins to come in and pretend to do something, plug in a computer. So one of the attacks that I used to do is, this is a little computer called a Raspberry Pi. And I used to plug into networks and try to get reverse access in, and I would sit in. So to Brian's point, right, I could be the janitor service, and go in and plug this in, right? Because I would pay the janitor, hey, just plug this into the network. This is what you need to do. Now I'm in. Back to, going back to all the things we said earlier, how do you monitor for this, right? Who's monitoring the parts? Is an employee capable of testing the credit card scanners? Do they know that if the computer has a virus, how can they identify that for the organization and bring it up, right? Considerations for remote work. So again, feel free to type in the questions, because I'm going to go in after.
I was going to say, Adonis,
Yep.
we did cover, I think for the remote work stuff, I think it's mostly just to the NIST guidelines and kind of like Zoom bombing and things like that. I know we have about 9 questions and we still have a lot of the resources. So I was going to encourage you, maybe if you want to skip ahead to the resources and kind of highlight any particular one, so then we can spend a lot of time on the questions.
Sure. So yeah, again, everybody's going to get the slide deck. So these are the resources for remote work. These are accessible to you. They do take a moment, so just carve out, an hour or two out of your busy week in the quarter, just to take a chance to review it. Again, the SBA does have, right? I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but I feel that the SBA does have programs to consult and help our audience with some of this task.
And for us, we a lot of the information too is for helping folks to access FBI, get NIST information. We even do have, like, if somebody wants to come up with like a cyber plan, like, where do I start? How can I get started? Those are things that we can help the business to start from scratch, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
So we can kind of help you get it.
And highly encourage. I mean, folks, this is grant money, right? This is zero out of pocket. Zero out of pocket. These types of work cost in the thousands. I'm letting you know, because I used to bill, I think it was like $3,000, for a very basic cybersecurity assessment, and just that the SBA is offering this to small businesses. I mean, I would take advantage of it, right? I think that people lose a lot of value when something is free, but don't, right? This is why it's designed for. Don't let the opportunity escape you. So going over real quick before I do the questions, some of the resources that we have here. So these are the websites for the FBI field office. The Secret Service has a cybersecurity team. They do join forces, the FBI and the Secret Service. I would know, I've worked with both of them. Again, you're going to get this, so at least you have the numbers here. Some additional information. This is where the sources came from. cybercrime. So whenever you need to report a cybercrime, do it here. InfraGard is a local organization. If you're able to join it, if you're in some type of critical infrastructure type of role or a business, please consider joining it. You get tapped into a lot of resources that only those that are in it can get information, such as myself. Fish Me is a free is that the free phishing tool?
That's where you can get infographics. So like kind of you're trying to post something on the fridge, you're trying to post something for awareness in the company, you can print out like infographics and different things for the business. So we like that because
Cool.
it's very visual.
These three are awareness tools. There are other ones, and I include some other ones. I'm not familiar with the Cyber Planner. Brian,
That's
maybe
like a
you can.
really old school one. We have a lot of small businesses that like want to start with a plan. The cyber planner, you can basically go in and you can build like a customized cyber plan for your business. And it's a good way to start. You can kind of like put together something. So it's actually pretty good.
Cool. These are for kids. So again, extension of your household is the kids. So NetSmart, Stay Safe Online. Again, sos.fbi.gov is another one. And then these are ones for Florida. So free, again, it's free cybersecurity training, secureflorida.org, the Florida Center for Cybersecurity, and Safe and Secure Online. This is from the ISEC group. And that, ladies and gentlemen, leads me to the Q&A set. So I saw a lot.
I can help you. So I'll tackle them. And I think Chetan had the most. I think Chetan, looking at your background, I think you are an IT engineer. You have something with cybersecurity, so you might be trying to stump Adonis. But so we have one that was anonymous that said, "How successful has the FBI been in tracking down these hackers? I feel like a lot of companies have just been quietly paying the ransoms."
Yeah, so I can answer that. So I have been in communication with the FBI from time to time. Again, the issue becomes the size of your ransom, right? Or the threat. FBI is obviously going to focus their efforts on the bigger fish, right? So in the millions, those types of big attacks. But it shouldn't discourage organizations to report it. Why? Because sometimes the little fish reporting into create a bigger picture for the FBI to go and attack. Now, the FBI unfortunately cannot disclose who they've taken down, how fast they've taken down, how many organizations have indirectly benefited from this, because that would give an alert to the attacker that the FBI is actually doing a good job, right? Right now, the bad guys don't know what the good guys are doing. But if you make it public, as in what's being requested here, they're going to know. They do work in conjunction with this, and again, it's all list of priorities, right? The same thing, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad things that happen, and you have to and like every other organization, you have to prioritize. In the police, it happens the same, right? Homicide takes priority over what is it? Small theft, I forgot. It's not grand theft, I forgot. Petty theft,
Oh, like
right?
larceny,
Under
yeah.
300,
Yeah, petty.
700. That's not going to take priority in the list. Same equivalent happens in the FBI, right? I am a Shopify and I use it. Okay, so Shopify is not a bad platform. If they have the capability of MFA, I would use that. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with the e-commercial space. A lot of the bigger fish just have their own e-commerce development websites. They leverage some type of platform in-house, or they have it spun up. But Shopify is a good, I think you're on the right track, as it's shared responsibility. I would look up their MSA, so master service agreement with the consumer. It's the one with the fine print that we always hit accept. Check out that. What's their SLA? What's their MSA? What in the event of a cyber attack? What do they cover? What are you responsible for?
What
Right.
are they liable for? What are you liable for? Read the fine print. If you have an attorney, have somebody review it to make sure what your obligations are. And it's just basic, kind of agreements with businesses. And we would also encourage you just pay attention to, what type of industry you're in too. Some industries and some products and services have more liability and more cybersecurity risks than others. So pay attention to that.
Yeah. So as a disclaimer mentioned, right? Speak with your legal counsel. Ask them, hey, you are a paying customer. Ask them, hey, what are my cyber responsibilities, right? Again, it takes some time, but that gives you peace of mind and lets you know what to do in the event of an attack,
Yeah.
right? What you are more prepared. So when that happens, it's like hurricane season, guys. I mean, when we know hurricanes are coming, we know get water, what to do. We're prepared for it, right? Versus what's happened, unfortunately, what's happened with other states that were not as prepared. And so they suffer the consequences. The same concept happens for everything in our life. Just be prepared, be mentally prepared.
And I was looking at some of the questions, Adonis, too, and some of them are very specific. So I would say we always try to give you guys good information and give you recommendations. We don't always recommend specific particular products or services. So I would kind of caution on that. He might not be able to tell you, you need to go buy this for your cell phone or you need to buy this for your computer. I'll give him the discretion. But because I see some of them, what security system should be installed in a wireless cell phone?
Yeah, I saw that. So I'm gonna do this one here. How often does an attack done on wireless or on-prem? And I see some of them are answered. So I'm just gonna read the ones that are not answered yet. How often an attack's done on wireless and on-prem? There are not so much as they used to. It used to be a lot easier. Wireless has been locked down quite a bit with WPA2, as long as you have a decent key. It doesn't have to be long. For organizations, that's why you have a guest network. So your guest network, you should lock that down from a security standpoint. Why? So this goes back. So it's not just about the access. It's now I'm pretending I'm pwning off your IP address, right? So as you want to lock it down, if you're giving guests Wi-Fi, lock it down, block all the bad stuff. Just let them do what they need to do to get work done. Why do I say this? Because I've sat down at wireless free Wi-Fi's and done like torrents or hacked from there, right? Or done my job from there. Somebody's asking, so talk to an IT vendor, consult with them on how to secure, if that's something of concern to you. How can I secure my network so that my critical infrastructure is separate? And it's not necessarily physically separate, it's just virtually separate so that, someone on the Wi-Fi can get into this and somebody on the public network or the regular network doesn't get access to certain things that are available here, right? That's what firewalls are for. They're meant to design, and when implemented correctly, keyword here, because just you have a firewall doesn't mean that it's configured correctly. And I've seen multiple times misconfigured firewalls. And then I get yelled at like, oh, you got to configure them correctly. And the same thing goes for systems. So one of the things here from an operating system point of view, you have to think about it from the point of a hacker. It's not necessarily that they're better or worse. It goes back to what I was saying. Misconfiguration is a threat. It's a risk. Lack of patching. So just because you sit on an Apple device and you don't patch it, does it make it more secure than a Microsoft or Linux device? The answer to that is no. Your Microsoft device says fully patched and your Linux is not, you're in the same boat, right? Linux does have patches. There are attacks for Linux growing because everybody's moving towards that platform. Apple has also seen an increase in malware and attacks. So it's not one better than the other. It's just check your misconfigurations. If you're looking at hardening, so there are security standards for hardening, and I will actually, Brian, I'll add it to the slide deck so people have it. It's called the CIS benchmarks. Again, consult with your legal counsel is going to tell you on the legal jargon, but consult with someone in IT, right? Ask around. Hey, from an IT perspective, first, what is their history? What is their experience with protecting IT systems? And then what's their understanding and securing it, because there is a way to harden any device, right? Put a pin, like if you get a phone and you don't do anything, it's not hardened. It's open. I can just get onto it. The same thing with a computer without a password. It's not hardened. Is it easy to get in? Sure. If you leave it outdated, the only secure device is the one that's unplugged from the electricity, right?
Yeah.
How do I keep changing? Huh?
Yeah, and I think Chetan's email, it's like they were trying to prepare, like how can I keep
How do I keep
changing
changing my
IP?
IP automatically? Server sitting in Florida. What? In Florida look like in Washington, D.C.? You'll have to send me what it is that you're talking about. It sounds like you're talking about
Like
so
spoofing,
there's a
right?
registry called Aaron. This is a lot technical though. So I'll just answer this one. Leave that there for me and I'll type it up. It's based on the Aaron database. So the Aaron database is reporting that whatever IP you're coming from is registered in Washington. That's what it is. So there is a register for IP addresses, and that's usually where geolocation comes from. I keep changing my IP. Yeah, they own the scope. So just one IP is one IP, but there's a scope of IPs,
Yeah,
right? So,
I sent you that one. I sent you that one so you can answer. Like
okay.
later.
Which application I use that files, what? Of an email. I'd have to look at that application. Can I use? I gotta see what the dat. I haven't seen a .dat. Which VPN do I recommend? There's quite a bit of them. The VPN for the most part. So a lot of folks get the VPNs because they're trying to circumvent the system for Netflix and these streaming services just to pretend to make their computer seem like they're somewhere else, because that's essentially what it does, right?
Mhm.
Let's say you VPN, like I house VPN, my brother VPNs from here because that's how he can play games while he's at work. I know I don't encourage it, but he asked me to do it. But what that does is that it tunnels his traffic. So his organization says you cannot, right? They don't block VPN, but his organization says you can't access games.com. I don't know. Pick an example. What VPN does is, let's say back to that public Wi-Fi. What I was mentioning earlier, why you shouldn't join public Wi-Fi, and you can join public Wi-Fi. Just don't do anything critical on public Wi-Fi, like check an account or put a password, username, and password. Right? If you're just looking at the news, there's no threat, there's no risk. It's just the news. I take that back. There is a threat because I could potentially modify the news page to have a drive-by. Again, it's very sophisticated attack to do something like that.
Like you said, don't go into your TD banking
Yeah.
account and put in your username and your password and all that.
Correct. That's the thing, right? If you feel unsafe in a public Wi-Fi, just tether. I mean, everybody has a phone nowadays that has some type of data plan that has at least like 2 gigs of tether. Just use that. I VPN back to work, but going back to the VPN question, there's a few out there. I don't really have a particular recommendation because they're all fairly the same concept. It just creates a secure tunnel from point A to point B and makes you come out a different endpoint.
Mhm.
I'm not sure on the archiving. I don't know how to do it on Apple. I know how to do it in WhatsApp. I don't know how I would have to Google that one. Archiving text messages.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think that was our last question. Any final questions for Adonis before we wrap up?
Did you want to stop the recording and unmute, or?
I think we're done. I don't think we have any other questions anymore. What's in the Q&A?
Yeah, I'm
Any
just reading.
recommendations on HIPAA?
Explain the question.
I guess regarding personally protected health information
Yeah, but what about HIPAA
for individuals?
for individuals?
Oh, for them. I think that's one to easily, they can look up that information. They can basically look up in terms of protecting for individuals and insurance agent. I would encourage on that one, Kika, that's industry specific. So I would recommend you can look up in terms of best practices and in terms of protections regarding insurance and HIPAA. A lot of the industry associations also have that information.
Yeah, I mean, HIPAA is just a framework that tells you how to protect, how you should be protecting what is it, patient information, right?
Yeah.
What are you
Protected
able
health
to
information.
yeah, what are you able to expose? Just like anything else, right? It's a framework
Mhm.
regulation that tells you you need to do XYZ. They check that you're doing XYZ. They even give you some guidelines on how to do XYZ. That is what these regulations are for. And then in addition to that, they tell you what are the consequences for not following XYZ as an
Yeah.
example, right?
But I
Very
was
high
gonna say,
level.
he said there is a general framework, but I would note each industry association has information for their members and their industry in terms of how to implement specific to what they do. And there's a lot of those that are like kind of like we're doing, like webinars, where people can get that information. They really get very detailed on the particular product or service, what they're doing. So I would encourage you to check into that. Like if it's an insurance agent, like insurance agents, industry, those type of things, realtors, any type of professional industry association, they're going to have information on that for folks in that industry. So
Yeah, so there are some, like you were saying, Brian, yeah, there are some industry tweaks or requirements per industry, right? With regards to HIPAA, right? That means that if it's an insurance agency, it's mostly, it sounds like an insurance agency that has some patient information that's doing like health insurance, that would be the
Yeah.
only one.
And she was just saying, in terms of what can they do to protect my client's information within the computer?
So most platforms have some security controls over it. You shouldn't be saving. That's really at the part of whoever's implementing that. So if you're using some type of service that you pay for monthly, they normally have some type of they know how to secure, right? So they off the bat are going to enable those features to protect HIPAA information, right? So like tracking screenshots, right? That's a big one. They may have that. Now, if it's you internally that you're just doing on computers, that's where I would recommend consult with someone who's an industry expert in that will do a HIPAA audit on your network and let you know where your gaps are so you can comply with HIPAA if that is indeed the case, right? Again, as Brian had mentioned in the beginning, we don't know your particular organization, how it works. Yeah, no worries. Just letting you know, right? So,
Yeah.
someone's gonna go, I'm gonna tell you from a consultant. I'm putting my consulting hat because I did some HIPAA. Yeah, you need to do an audit. I would tell you as part of when I used to do consultative work, you need to do an audit because I would need to do HIPAA gap analysis is what they call it to identify where your gaps are. So if you were starting or if you don't know, if you have not done any type of HIPAA work whatsoever, and again, this goes the same for CMMC. Brian, I don't know if that's a big one right now, the CMMC. I'm sure folks are on it. But with regards to HIPAA, just like anything else, if you haven't started, there is a consult with someone that's in the realm that can help you at least provide a game plan for, hey, normally they're gonna, at most cases they call it a gap analysis or whatever framework gap analysis.
Yeah.
Identif goes
Like
in, it does an audit of your posture, your cybersecurity posture as it relates to that regulation or requirement. So if it's HIPAA, they're going to go down a checklist and they're going to say yes, no, identify the no's and put a plan in place so you can fill the gaps, gap analysis on the no's. And then you want to do this on a regular 1 yearly. PCI is the only one that I'm aware of that gives you no choice but to do it yearly. And if you're in if you fall in a bigger level, so I think there's 4 levels if I remember correctly. The 4th level being the highest. It's based on transactions per year. They have to actually do an audit. There are 4 vulnerability scans a year. There is a penetration test at the end of every year, and you have to cycle pen testers or consultants.
Yeah, but I think you should look up HIPAA gap analysis like you recommended, and then also look particular to your industry because you might want somebody that has more experience related to insurance or like that particular personal health information, so they kind of know what they're looking for. And so I think that's a good suggestion. And
No,
so
I echo that as well, Brian, because a hospital requirements are different than what's called a BA, business associate. If I remember correctly, in HIPAA, you have hospitals and business associates. Business associates are the ones that have some services and they don't have to comply with the same thing that the hospital has to comply with. So yes, as always, we can steer you in we can point you in the right direction. We don't have all the information, but it's a starting point because they're just as Brian mentioned, there's so much information. I mean, we just added another like stockpile of torment to your life right now with cybersecurity.
We raised all these problems and then gave you like a couple ways to look into it. I think we're going to go ahead and stop the recording. I did want to encourage you guys. We will have some additional discussion, but did want to note that first I wanted to thank Adonis. He's a rock star as always. I always love doing presentations with him. So this was a good excuse for me to reconnect and do a great presentation. Was also going to encourage you guys to go to our program website, miamibusinessnavigator.com, so that you can register with the Navigator program and get connected. And if we can help you or our groups can help you, we will. If we can't, we will connect you to resources, to information that's in the community. Jesus just put it in the chat for everybody. That will be your call to action, especially if you're interested in cybersecurity. We can get you connected to a lot of those resources that we put in the presentation, and was going to stop the recording and basically any other further discussion from